the most profitable furniture company on earth is, legally speaking, a charity. It cannot be bought, it cannot be sold, it cannot be inherited. When its founder died in 2018, one of the richest men alive, his children did not get the company. Nobody did, because decades earlier he had quietly redesigned his empire so that no one would ever own it again. His name was Ingvar Kamprad, and for 70 years he did one thing better than any businessman alive. He deleted costs. He deleted the salesman. He deleted the delivery truck. He deleted the factory. For years, much of his furniture was built behind the Iron Curtain. And then he deleted the most expensive worker in retail by replacing him with you. Every bookcase you have ever assembled, every cart you've pushed through a warehouse maze, that is you, working the final shift on IKEA's assembly line. Unpaid. And here is the unsettling part, later proven in a Harvard lab. The work makes you love the furniture more. When he ran out of ordinary costs to delete, Kamprad went after the three that nobody else dared touch: taxes, ownership, and death itself. This is the story of IKEA, an empire started by a teenager selling matchsticks, nearly strangled by a cartel, saved by its enemies, and now, legally, owned by no one at all. 1926, Småland, southern Sweden, stony farm country where thrift isn't a virtue, it's a survival trait. Ingvar Kamprad starts selling at age 5. Matches, bought in bulk from Stockholm, sold one box at a time to neighbors. The margin lesson of his life, learned before he could read properly, and he never would read easily. By many accounts, his dyslexia is why IKEA products carry names instead of numbers to this day. At 17 in 1943, he registers a company built from his initials and his home, Ingvar Kamprad, Elmatory Farm, Akka Parish, IKEA, pens, wallets, picture frames, nylon stockings, anything he could sell cheaper by mail. In 1948, furniture. Deliveries went out on the county milk van. But 1943 marks something else, and this story doesn't work without it. That same year, Sweden's security police opened a file on the teenager from Elmatory. Kamprad had joined a Swedish fascist movement, and he would remain close to its leader, Per Engdahl, into the early 1950s. The world wouldn't learn any of this for another half-century. Remember the file, it comes back. By 1953, Kamprad had opened a showroom in the village of Älmhult, and buyers came from across Sweden. Because he was doing something the industry considered a declaration of war, selling decent furniture at prices that made everyone else look like thieves. Sales exploded from 1 million krona to 6 million in 3 years. And the Swedish furniture establishment responded the way comfortable establishments always do. Its trade association organized a boycott. IKEA was banned from the industry's fairs. Suppliers were pressured, one by one, to stop selling to Kamprad. The details were serious enough that Sweden's own cartel authority documented the whole campaign in 1957. A company with soaring demand, and, soon, almost nothing left to sell. The Swedish furniture industry had voted to strangle IKEA in its crib. Instead, it was about to hand Ingvar Kamprad the greatest gift of his life. Here is the thing about a boycott. It only works if your victim has nowhere else to go. Kamprad went to Denmark first. Not enough capacity. Then, in 1960, he read that Poland's foreign trade minister was visiting Stockholm, looking for Western business. Kamprad wrote him a letter. In January 1961, he crossed the Iron Curtain to Warsaw with his father and his head of purchasing, and toured a chair factory in Radomsko. Communist Poland had timber, factories, and costs no Swedish supplier could touch. By most accounts, by the end of the decade, roughly half of IKEA's furniture was being made behind the Iron Curtain. The cartel had tried to cut IKEA's supply line and instead pushed it onto the cheapest supply line in Europe. His enemies had built his moat. the boycott forced a second transformation. Locked out of other people's furniture, IKEA had to design its own, and Kamprad inverted the entire logic of design. At IKEA, the price tag is designed first. Pick what it must cost, then engineer a product to hit it. Around the same time came the accident the company still mythologizes. In 1956, as the story goes, designer Gillis Lundgren pulled the legs off a table to fit it in a car, and Flatpack was born. It sounds like trivia. It's actually the whole business. The most expensive thing you can ship is air, and IKEA simply stopped shipping it. One more accident became doctrine. In 1965, IKEA opened its giant store outside Stockholm, and opening day was chaos, so staff threw open the warehouse and let customers pull their own boxes. It worked so well it became the system. Notice the pattern? At IKEA, every crisis gets promoted into policy. Meanwhile, the catalogue, at its peak, roughly 200 million copies a year, became, by many estimates, a more widely printed annual publication than the Bible. But everything so far, Poland, the flat pack, the self-serve warehouse, only explains how IKEA got cheap. It doesn't explain the strangest thing about it. Why, once you're inside, you do all the work. And why you leave happier because of it. Walk into any IKEA, and you are inside a machine tuned over 70 years. The path is a one-way maze. By design, you pass nearly everything before you reach the exit. The restaurant isn't a courtesy. Cheap, hot food keeps you in the building. And Kamprad liked to say, it's hard to do business with someone on an empty stomach. The showrooms don't sell you a bookcase. They sell you a life with the bookcase already in it. And then comes the real invention. In every other industry, the most expensive part of the product is the end of it. The last mile of delivery, the final assembly, the human labor that turns parts into a thing. IKEA didn't reduce that cost. It transferred it to you. You provide the truck. You provide the labor. In any other context, we'd call it outsourcing. IKEA outsourced the factory floor into your living room, and you paid for the privilege. Here's why it works. In 2011, researchers at Harvard ran experiments where people built simple IKEA boxes and folded origami, and then bid on them. People consistently valued their own amateur creations far above identical items built by others. The researchers named the phenomenon after the company, the IKEA Effect. Labor, it turns out, leads to love. Which means the flat pack isn't just a cost cut, it's a loyalty program. The Allen key is the cheapest employee onboarding tool ever invented. And the employee is you. By the 1970s, Kamprad had turned his customers into his workforce and made them enjoy it. But the strangest character in this story was about to become the founder himself. The legend says Ingvar Kamprad was the world's cheapest billionaire. Flew economy, drove an ancient Volvo, furnished his house from his own store. The legend is true, and it's also incomplete. After he died, reporters tallied the rest. A villa above Lake Geneva, an estate in Sweden, vineyards in Provence, a Porsche alongside the Volvo. The frugality was real, but it was also management. A founder who flies economy can demand 10,000 managers do the same. At IKEA, even the myth was a cost control device. In 1973, he left Sweden. Its taxes, he felt, punished exactly what he was building, and eventually settled in Switzerland. But leaving a country is amateur tax planning. What Kamprad did next has been studied ever since. In 1982, he gave IKEA away to a charitable foundation he created in the Netherlands, the Stichting INGKA Foundation. On paper, one of the largest charitable foundations on earth now owned the stores. The Economist would later examine the structure in a famous piece titled Flat Pack Accounting, noting, acidly, how remarkably little charity the world's richest charities seem to do. And that was only half the trick. Because the brand, the trademark, the concept, the intellectual soul of IKEA was carved out separately into a company ultimately controlled through a foundation in Liechtenstein. And every IKEA store on Earth pays that company a franchise fee of 3% of sales every year, forever. Read that design again, slowly. The stores are owned by one foundation. The brand is owned by another. And the 3% flows even from IKEA's own stores. Meaning the empire Kamprad built pays a permanent tax to itself. Microsoft taxed the clone makers. Nintendo taxed the game makers. Kamprad went further than either. He taxed himself and routed the toll beyond the reach of any government, any heir, and any buyer. Last year, that single line, the 3%, was worth 1.32 billion euros, skimmed off roughly 44 billion in worldwide sales. The store side alone booked 41.5 billion euros of revenue, and none of it can ever be sold. No shares to buy, no controlling family. Kamprad even signed away his right to appoint the Liechtenstein Foundation's council in 2013, and its rules bar his family from ever holding a majority. The file came back, of course. In 1994, a Swedish newspaper unearthed the fascist letters, and Kamprad wrote to his employees, calling it the greatest mistake of his life. A 2011 book showed the ties ran deeper than he'd admitted. History rarely lets founders curate themselves. Ingvar Kamprad died in January 2018 at 91. And at the most founder-shaped company in Europe, nothing happened. No succession war, no sale, no estate to break up. That was the point. The last cost Kamprad deleted was his own death. Every empire in this series eventually found something to tax. Microsoft taxed the machines. Nintendo taxed the games. Costco taxed the front door. Kamprad found the two taxes nobody else could see. A 3% toll on his own empire, collected in perpetuity, and the deepest subsidy in retail, your Saturday afternoon and your Allen key, donated freely and repaid in affection. Whether the structure is genius or a legal ghost story depends on where you stand. But judge it by its own test. The only test Kamprad ever cared about. Does the machine survive? The cartel that boycotted him is forgotten. The countries he fled have changed their tax codes. The founder himself is gone, and the machine runs exactly as the matchstick boy drew it. Unowned, unbuyable, and unkillable. Next time, the hamburger chain that barely makes money selling hamburgers. Because it is secretly one of the largest landlords on Earth, and its real customers are its own franchisees. If you don't want to miss McDonald's, you know what to do.